The moon is the most photographed object in our sky. We've mapped every crater, landed on it 6 times, walked across its surface, and hauled its rocks back to Earth. It should have no secrets left. And yet, again and again, in those photographs, people keep finding things that shouldn't be there. Shapes, structures, towers, lights that appear out of nowhere and vanish just as fast. Some of them are hoaxes, built to fool you. Some are tricks of the eye or flaws in old film. But a few, a stubborn, unsettling few, are completely real and stranger than anything anyone ever made up. Tonight, we're counting down the 8 weirdest things ever found on the moon. Some of them will make you laugh. Some of them will give you chills. And the last one is still up there right now, waiting in the dark with no one inside. Strange lights on the moon. For more than 1,000 years, people have looked up at the moon and seen it do something impossible. It lit up. In June of 1178, 5 monks in Canterbury, England, watched in horror as the upper horn of the crescent moon appeared to split apart and spew fire, sparks, and burning coals into the dark. They swore an oath that it was true. Centuries later, in 1958, a Soviet astronomer named Nikolai Kozyrev aimed his telescope at the crater Alphonsus and caught a reddish glow. And this time, he caught it on film, and it kept happening. Sudden flashes, hazy patches that blur a crater's edge, colored lights that flare for a few minutes and then simply fade away. Astronomers gave them a name, transient lunar phenomena, but for a long time a name was all they had. The moon is supposed to be dead, frozen solid, airless, silent for billions of years. So why does it keep lighting up? The answer, we now know, is real. Pockets of gas, mostly radon, leak up from beneath the surface and scatter the sunlight, while tiny meteorite strikes kick up glinting clouds of dust. The moon isn't as dead as it looks. Every now and then, it still exhales. The monoliths. In 1966, 3 years before humans ever set foot up there, NASA's Lunar Orbiter 2 was mapping the Sea of Tranquility when it sent back a photograph that made people uneasy. Scattered across the flat, empty plain was a cluster of tall, sharp objects, each one casting a long, spire-like shadow, and they seemed to stand in a rough line. A newspaper nicknamed them the Blair Cuspids. To a lot of people, they didn't look natural at all. They looked arranged, placed, deliberate. Some insisted they were towers. Others said they were the ruins of something ancient, built by hands that weren't human. The image spread for decades, passed around as hard proof that there were structures on the moon. But the answer was hiding in plain sight, in the shadows themselves. The photo was taken when the sun was barely above the lunar horizon, at the exact angle that stretches even a small rock into a towering black silhouette, the same way a pebble throws a long shadow at sunset here on Earth. When later missions photographed the same spot with the sun higher in the sky, the mighty monoliths shrank down to what they had always been, ordinary boulders. The moon didn't build them, the lighting did. Ghostly swirls painted across the surface. On the near side of the moon, in a dark plain of hardened lava, there is a bright, curling shape that looks completely out of place. It's called Rainer Gamma. From above, it looks like someone dipped a finger in white paint and dragged it through the gray, swirling, looping tendrils that stretch for dozens of miles. There's no crater there, no mountain, no sign of any impact that could have carved a pattern like that. For decades, it was one of the single strangest markings on the entire moon, and as our probes looked closer, they found dozens more of these swirls, scattered across the surface with no obvious cause. So what draws them? The answer is completely invisible. Beneath each swirl sits a pocket of ancient magnetism, a small, frozen magnetic field locked into the rock long ago. That field deflects the stream of charged particles pouring off the sun, shielding the ground directly beneath it, while all around it, the exposed surface slowly darkens under the solar wind over millions of years. The swirls were never painted onto the moon. They're the shadow of a magnetism the moon shouldn't still have, a fingerprint left by a force we can't even see. The tower. Buried in the archive of old Lunar Orbiter photographs from the 1960s is a single anomaly that simply refuses to die. In one grainy frame, a vast, thin structure appears to rise off the lunar surface, climbing up and up for what enthusiasts claimed was miles into the black space above the moon. They named it the Tower. Nothing in nature builds straight up like that. So, to the people who wanted to believe, this was it, the real thing at last. Alien architecture, a glass spire, the last ruin of a civilization that stood there before us. And the image is genuinely hard to shake. It's dark, blurry, strange, And once you've seen the shape, your eye keeps returning to it. But that blur is the whole story. The tower is a photographic artifact, a smeared, overexposed point of light combined with physical damage and dust on the film, then stretched and distorted by the crude way those 1960s images were scanned, copied, and copied again, long before digital cameras existed. Every orbiter that has flown since, carrying vastly sharper cameras, has looked at that exact spot and found nothing standing there at all. The most famous structure on the moon exists in only one place, a flaw, frozen into a piece of 60-year-old film. Orange soil where nothing should have color. December 1972, Apollo 17, the last time human beings ever walked on the moon. Geologist Harrison Schmitt is shuffling through the gray dust near a small crater called Shorty when he suddenly stops dead. "There is orange soil," he shouts over the radio, his voice climbing with excitement, and he isn't exaggerating. Cutting through the endless, colorless gray is a streak of bright, vivid orange, so out of place that back in Houston, Mission Control assumed his visor had fogged up, or that his tired eyes were playing tricks on him. But it was real. Schmitt scooped it up, bagged it, and carried it 250,000 miles home. And under the microscope, the soil revealed its secret. It was made of millions of tiny beads of glass, orange, amber, and deep cherry red. They had been forged in a violent volcanic fire fountain more than 3 billion years ago, blasted into the airless sky, frozen solid in an instant, and then buried and preserved ever since. The grayest, deadest world we know had been quietly hiding a splash of brilliant color the entire time. A mystery hut on the far side. In 2021, China's Yutu-2 rover was slowly crawling across the far side of the moon, the hidden hemisphere that always faces away from Earth, the side no human eye ever sees directly. When its cameras spotted something on the horizon that stopped the mission team cold. Out on the flat gray plain, all by itself, stood a dark, sharp-edged, cube-shaped object. It looked deliberate. It looked built. Chinese scientists, only half joking, nicknamed it the Mystery Hut. And when the images reached the internet, it exploded. Was it a building? A monument? A door? Yutu-2 turned and set a course straight for it, and then spent the next 2 months painstakingly rolling toward it across the rubble, a little closer every day, while the whole world waited. And when the rover finally got close enough to see it clearly, the mysterious hut shrank into what it had always been, a rock. Just a chunky, cubish boulder, most likely flung there by a nearby meteorite impact. The team gave it a new, gentler nickname, the Jade Rabbit Rock. A cube on an alien world turned out to be a stone, but for 2 long months, it was the most fascinating object in the entire solar system. The Artemis Fakes. In April 2026, NASA did something no one had done in over 50 years. 4 astronauts aboard the Orion capsule flew all the way around the moon and came home safe. It was real, it was historic, and they brought back stunning, modern photographs of the lunar surface and the Earth hanging in the black. But almost immediately, something strange happened online. Alongside the real images, a flood of others began to spread. An Earth rising over craters it never actually rose over. Astronauts floating in front of telltale green screens. Moonscapes bent and lit in ways no lens on Earth or in space could capture. They looked stunning, dramatic enough to belong in a blockbuster. And they raced across the internet, racking up millions of views, often far more than the genuine photos ever got. There was just one problem. None of them were real. They were generated by AI, dressed up with mission logos and confident captions built to fool you. And then it got stranger still. People began accusing the real photographs, the authentic ones, of being fake, calling them CGI, claiming the whole mission was filmed on a green screen. Think about that. 60 years ago, a blur on old film became the tower. Now the fakes are sharper than reality, and reality itself gets called the fake. The oldest lunar illusion had finally turned inside out. A cave leading down into the moon. For years, scientists had been staring at strange dark spots in the moon's photographs. Deep, round pits scattered across its surface, punched into the ground like open drains, dropping down into a blackness the cameras couldn't see into. They suspected these pits led somewhere. In 2024, they finally proved it. A team went back to old radar data collected from a pit in the Sea of Tranquility, the same region where Apollo 11 first landed, and confirmed what lay beneath it, an underground cave, at least 40 meters wide, running for tens of meters back beneath the surface. a real, empty, hollow tunnel sealed inside the body of the moon. It is almost certainly a lava tube, a passage carved out by rivers of molten rock over 3 billion years ago that drained away and left the tunnel hollow, untouched, and buried in perfect darkness ever since. No human being has ever set foot inside it. No light has reached it in billions of years. And one day, that very cave could become the first permanent human shelter on the moon, a ready-made home, waiting in the dark beneath the surface, long before we ever knew that it was there. Look back over the whole list: the towers, the monoliths, the glowing lights, the cube on the far side. Almost every one of them turned out to be an illusion, a shadow, a smear on old film, a clever piece of AI, or just a trick of the low sun. The moon has always been a master of illusion. It shows us faces and structures and cities that were never really there. But then there's the other half. The orange glass, the magnetic swirls, the strange lights it still breathes out, the cave waiting in the dark. Those are real. And that is the part that stays with you. Because once you strip away every hoax and every mistake, what's left over is stranger than the fiction ever was. The moon still keeps its secrets, and we are only just beginning to learn how to read them.